no money, that's an asshole. It wasn't a phase.
Hello everybody, welcome back to the Senior Citizen Podcast, and today we are here with Last Disaster, which I come to find out is a solo project with Jared.
Yep, that's pretty much.
Jared Cove.
I try to retain an illusion of having a full band, but it's definitely a collaborative effort because I have a ton of people that help me out and make it a reality. But as far as making the executive decisions and whatnot, it's me writing the music and booking the shows. So yeah.
Right. And that's a fun dynamic, I think, and we'll get into that because I love talking to people that are like more into like a solo project. But we're gonna start with you, lawyer by day.
Yes.
Last Disaster and band dude by night.
Correct.
How did this happen?
Yeah, so I mean, I kind of think the two things are intertwined more than people realize. Like, so what I do is I'm a public defense attorney. That's the type of a lawyer I am. And we represent people that don't have the privilege of being able to like hire their own private attorney. And unfortunately, a repercussion of that is that we have a lot of cases. But basically, I got into law school because my older sister, who's also a musician, she went to law school. She started doing her internships with a similar office as mine, but in Dade County. I work in Broward. But a lot of like what I learned through like the DIY music scene and a lot of what a lot of conversations that take place in like music scene circles are the same conversations that kind of got me interested in social justice and stuff of that nature, which definitely funneled me into that path of following in my sister's footsteps. Her and I are very similar, so I knew that if it worked for her and if she enjoyed it, then I would enjoy it too, and I do.
Right. It takes a certain kind of person to become a lawyer because it's you have to have a lot of bandwidth for the reading and all that. I can imagine. Yeah. Someday I dreamed of being a lawyer, and it was like, no, absolutely not. I went into journalism.
Nice.
Same ideology though. Like, you want to be the voice of the people who really don't have the opportunity to speak out.
1,000%. I think it's again one of those things people tend to forget the similarities before they are quick to point out the differences between things, but something like journalism and especially what I do, public defense lawyering, it's very similar. You're in a way you're an advocate, but you're also informing people, which is a form of advocacy too. So that's cool. I think that's awesome.
Oh, and I love that for you.
Yeah.
How did Last Disaster start?
Yeah, so when I was in college in Tampa, I kind of felt sort of the pull between trying to pursue my creative passions while also trying to focus on my academic life, which was something that I struggled in. Like I was never so great with school, but I was always determined to get to a certain point. I wasn't always determined to be an attorney, but I was always determined to pursue something that involved academia. So my first EP, the College Try EP, was the first thing we ever put out. And I say we because at the time I was really, I would write these songs, the skeletons of the songs I like to call it. And sort of how I mentioned earlier, it really does take a village. Like I have a bunch of people that help me out, whether it's bouncing ideas off of them or using them as studio musicians. And one of the first people who I turned to help bring my songs to life was my friend Will Ryan. He lives in New York now, but me and him have been in bands together since we were like 15 years old. And he played drums on that EP, he played guitars on that EP, and he did some backup vocals as well. So that was really the first step in making this band a reality, was just writing some songs and having him help me with, what do you think about this song? Or do you think maybe there's a certain guitar part that could help bridge this gap? And he was a huge part of that. So ultimately we kind of made enough songs to make an EP. We bounced around from a different band names, but ultimately, I suggested the Last Disaster option, and it ended up sticking. So that was back in 2019. We started recording the EP. We released it in 2020, and literally a week after our EP release show, which was at Loser Lounge in Pompano.
Okay.
which is no longer around anymore, right? It became a different venue after that. But we played our first show in March of 2020, and a week later, the world kind of shut down.
Yeah.
Which probably needed to happen. Obviously we didn't want to be a part of any type of issue regarding making a terrible situation even worse. But it was still really difficult because so much had gone into making our vision a reality, turning my skeletons of a song into like a real full-fledged project. And right when I had the opportunity to like play shows and share it with the world, I was sort of stifled by this global pandemic, this literally once in a lifetime thing.
Yeah.
So now that we've kind of found our way through that as a society, I kind of dipped my toes back into making music for Last Disaster, and it also helps that now I'm done with law school.
Right, yeah. That's a big, it's so heart-shattering to like prep so much for something, and I'm sure you had all these big dreams going on. I was a recent college grad when the pandemic hit.
Wow, yeah.
So I think it affected everybody in a different way, where you have all these plans and all of a sudden it's like, you're staying locked up in your house for
You're doing school online, which I finished law school online, which was really weird.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it was a similar experience for you, and maybe not with the school itself, but just working and figuring out what now,
I had my big girl 9 to 5, and then all of a sudden it was like, they said stay home for 2 weeks.
Right.
And 2 weeks turned into like 3 years. At
some
point they were like, you can come in and pick up your stuff because we left everything there.
Sure, that's wild.
Yeah, and all the layoffs and stuff. Like, it was a scary time, and I bet even for your music, you're like, God, is this a sign? Like, should I not do it?
Yeah, obviously the music stuff really is an afterthought. As important as it is to me, I can pick up my guitar at home and play a song and still get some gratification out of music, but there was definitely a huge part of me that hated that all of this hard work kind of fell on its face because there was no opportunity to follow up with like live shows or do a photo shoot or anything like that. These little important details that go into being an artist, especially nowadays, a lot of it revolves around social media content. I wasn't even in a position to make it, to make that content because of how our society was and how we had to preserve our healthy social distancing practices and stuff like that. So I wasn't booking any photo shoots, certainly not booking any shows, no studio time, nothing like that. It definitely felt anticlimactic.
Right.
Yeah.
Just false flat.
Right.
Now in retrospect, 4 years later almost.
Which sounds crazy, but go on.
No, it's like you blinked and the time just went by, but in retrospect, when you think about that time, is there anything positive that you got out of it?
Oh, for sure. I think that it gave me the chance to really focus on law school, even though my law school dynamic had changed. I'm not going in person anymore. I was going to law school at the University of Miami, and all of a sudden instead of living in my apartment with my roommate, going to school in person, I moved back in with my parents because there was no point in spending money on rent.
Right.
I moved back in with my folks, did law school online, and maybe I needed that because law school was a really difficult time for me. I really struggled to stay afloat with my GPA and stuff like that. I had a scholarship that I was fortunate enough to have, but I came really, really close to losing it. So in a way, maybe it's not so bad that I had to focus on school and I didn't really have anything else to focus on with regards to music. But another positive that came from it, in relation to being an artist, is that I was writing music. I was, experiencing life, which is a part of the creative process. Everything we do every day kind of influences our art, I think, whether you realize it or not. You don't have to just sit down and write the song to be incorporating your day-to-day influences into your creative process. It happens subconsciously, is what I'm saying.
Right.
So I think that I just put out a new single like last month, February 1st. I put out a new single, and I think that who's to say that song would have come out the same if not for how the past couple of years have gone. It's kind of a butterfly effect. Who's to say?
Right.
But yeah, I try to be a glass half full type of person. So there's a ton of negatives about the COVID era, obviously being this medical health issue at the forefront of the topic, but I try to just reflect on the good things and the growth that I experienced as a person and as an artist and as what I am now, as an attorney. At the time I was a student.
Right.
So it was all just part of the process.
Right, and I love asking that question in interviews in general, because very rarely do you get somebody who could just pull out so much positive from it.
Mm-hmm.
I remember one time I was talking to this singer turned actor, and then pandemic made him go back to being a singer and start writing music again. And I was like, I mean, did you deal with any mental health battles during the pandemic? And he's like, oh no, I mean, all my kids moved back in with me, and it was actually a pretty decent time for me.
Yeah,
and it's well, nice for you.
I think I'm guilty of that too, because to an extent there was, we found ways, we as a society and as friend groups and stuff like that, found ways to have fun. Mm-hmm. And maybe some of my buddies that live outside of the South Florida area I don't talk to so often, we would hop on Xbox, or we would play a game on our phones and just be on a video call or audio call between all of us. And I think I've seen that pour over into even now, where we utilize those things more than we used to. I find myself FaceTiming friends more now than I did 5 years ago, and I think COVID was a part of that. It sort of enabled this, taking advantage of the technology available to you and the resources available to you to reconnect with people that we take our relationships for granted when they're not right in front of us. And COVID really taught us that. Because our day-to-day relationships were totally put to a stop.
Right.
And we had to get our buddies on the phone just to socialize. We had to get our buddies on Xbox just to socialize.
Yeah.
So I found ways to have fun for sure. Me and my buddies would play Risk. There's a Risk app, the board game Risk.
Yeah.
We'd play it on our phones, and it would get really heated to the point where we all swore off of it. We don't play Risk anymore because it just gets too real.
Yeah.
So
that's how you lose friendships.
Yeah, exactly. But I guess similar to who the guy you're talking about with his kids and having everybody come home, you have to find the positives in a situation like that. And I think a lot of people were surprised at how easy it was to find those positives, mm-hmm. even with all the horrible things going on at the time. But yeah.
Good stuff. If you think the pandemic wouldn't have hit in the moment that it did for Last Disaster, would it be more than just a solo project right now, or was that always the intention day one?
Yeah, no, that's tough to say. I never really I don't even think of it really as a quote unquote solo project, because I feel like it's kind of dismissive of the people my buddies that I'll come bring in and record. Even for this latest single, I had my buddy James Williams, who lives in Tampa, play drums, and he had a lot of creative input in the fills and stuff that he would use. Same thing with my buddy Glenn, who plays in a band called Overthinker in Orlando. He played bass for that same song, that same single. So
I think it's just a low pressure thing, no?
Big time. And luckily, all my buddies who are involved in some way, shape, or form with the project, they're all super patient and understanding of the fact that this is sort of my creative vision, and I work really hard to find that work-life balance. Music is such a huge part of my life, mm-hmm. and it's cool to have a vision and have a team of people that is willing to help you make that vision a reality.
Right.
But to answer your question more directly, I just don't know. I don't know what would have happened if COVID didn't happen. I wonder that a lot sometimes, but at the same time, I think that I always would have been the guy driving the bus, so to speak. Mm-hmm. I kind of always was, and I don't mind that. I don't mind being the front man or the primary songwriter, but I think I like it how I have it now, where I have a roster of people. If they're not available for a certain show, it doesn't mean we can't play the show. I just find somebody else to fill in, and it just goes forward like that. And that way, it's low pressure for them too.
Right.
They feel enabled and encouraged to be a part of the project without feeling like it's
commitment.
Yeah, high commitment, all or nothing. It's not, So I think that's a win-win for everybody involved.
With the latest single, which I'm I can't remember the name of it right now.
It's called The Breakout Plan.
The Breakout Plan. Okay, yeah, it's neck deep but better.
Wow.
And I say that because I'm not the biggest neck deep fan.
Me neither, actually. Yeah.
But that's why.
Yeah.
It's more of a style that I enjoy.
For sure, my biggest. my biggest gripe with Neck Deep is really like the vocal style. I don't love the singer, so I love their music, and I definitely know a couple of their songs, but I know exactly what you mean, and I'll take that as a compliment because they are such a huge band in that circle right now. I think they're doing a lot of things right musically. The vocals aren't for me. I bring more of like a pop element to it.
Right.
But I really appreciate that. It's been a long time coming. It's our first original single in like 4 years almost.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I heard one of the older songs. Can't remember them.
Yeah.
I don't like me the name right now. I'm sorry.
It's all a blur to me too, so don't worry. And I know you're still getting over your fever.
I'm still fuzzy.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
like, this is a solo project. I'm like, what are you talking about? And then
It's
I thought it was a whole other band. Wow. No, but it did have a much different sound to it, and I love the way that this is evolving. I want to go back, like way back, before even last semester, that you said that you were in bands when you were like 15 and stuff. How were you involved in your local scene? What were you like how was it like growing up in that?
Yeah, so I think a lot of people in my social circle back when I was 15, 16 years old, that were involved in the music scene would give props to this place called the Talent Farm, and I would too.
I've talked about the Talent Farm.
I think most people that grew up in Broward at like all ages shows would throw in the Talent Farm as like one of the very top things they think of when it comes to what influenced them to be a part of the scene.
It was the spot.
Yeah, it was the spot because there, especially now, if you look around, there's no all ages venues. Almost none of them are all ages, and the all ages shows that happen are usually bending the rules in a way that, you know, it is so difficult as a promoter because you want to encourage everybody to come to shows and you want kids to come and have a good time and feel like they're in like a safe environment where they're not breaking rules. And the Talent Farm was that spot. So I remember going to shows at the Talent Farm when I was like really young, like 14, and seeing local bands and feeling inspired because so much of what we understand, like music, live music to be, it sort of like demands this presence, and it demands I need to be like a big artist to like play shows, or I need to have fans that'll come out to the shows in order to justify playing them, and that's not true. So when you go to a place like the Talent Farm and you see a bunch of kids hanging out, a bunch of kids in bands just watching each other play, in a way, it's, you know, those shows are always an eye roll because it's like, no one really came to buy tickets, it's all just a bunch of other bands. But when you're 15, 16, 17 years old, that's so much better than what's available elsewhere. You know, a lot of kids only have the opportunity to get in a garage with their buddies and play music, which is amazing and super sick. That's the first step. But that's where it ends for people until they become adults, if they decide to continue their musical journey. So, you know, first and foremost, I think the Talent Farm was like a huge inspiration to me when it came to just coming. I grew up in North Miami Beach, like near Ives Dairy Road. Yeah. So, and I would get into trouble at school sometimes, and my parents kind of thought the whole Talent Farm, like DIY music thing, was a little odd. And Talent Farm wasn't the only spot, but you know, there'd be times where I'd be like, hey guys, can you maybe help get me to the Talent Farm? Could you guys drive me to Pembroke Pines to go to this show? And at first they were apprehensive about it, but every once in a while when they were able to take me in person, oftentimes I would have to take a bus or buses to get there, but every once in a while when they were able to take me in person, I think that they quickly saw how positive of an environment it was, and they were like, yeah, if this is how he's spending his Friday nights, then we want to encourage that too. We want to enable that too, and they were really cool about that for the most part. Except when like I snuck out on a weeknight to be at the Talent Farm until 12 o'clock at night. They wouldn't love that, but all things considered, I think most parents of that era were really okay with their kids being at a place like that because it was safe, and for the most part, nothing really negative ever happened except for the occasional fight between fools, you know. Yeah.
I had the one friend that was always the driver. I mean, I was probably like, she was like 2 years older than me, so I was like 14, she was 16, and she was just like my ride every time to the Talent Farm. Like, huge. You pick me up from this spot. It's like, you got $5 of gas.
Or, you know, you post on the Facebook page, hey, can anyone come scoop me up from, you know, my parents' place in North Miami Beach? People would respond and they'd help you out.
The craziest thing for me now is like digging through that Facebook graveyard of what was the Talent Farm is that you see the bands that played there, and it was like Citizen and the Wonder Years and Touche Amore, and I don't know about you, but like I blanked out whatever band I saw there. Maybe I remember seeing like Feral Lux.
Yeah.
But other than that, it was like...
Yeah, Feral Lux was cool. They played outside Revolution Live one time. I forgot who they opened up for. Yeah, Talent Farm would have super, super small shows where like maybe 15 people would pay for a ticket, and then they'd have these massive shows where like Newfound Glory would play back-to-back sets, and one crowd went in. Yeah, this is a specific show that I'm thinking of where I think it was the 10-year anniversary just a few days ago of, you know, Newfound Glory, this huge band from Coral Springs, announced a show at the Talent Farm less than 24 hours in advance of the show.
Oh.
And so many people came that they had to play twice because there was a whole crowd that went in to bring the venue to capacity, and then after that set, everybody left out, and there was a whole crowd outside to be like the second crowd for the second set, and I was part of that second crowd at the second set, and I wasn't able to stick around for the whole thing because it was a weeknight, and my parents were furious that I went. But you know, stuff like that. They're a huge band. They're massive. You know, and to be the kind of venue that has events like that, and then a few days later we'll have like an all ages show. Yeah. You know, 6 local bands that barely have any music out, let alone presence. That just goes to show the lengths that the guy who owned it, Kevin Burns, would go to try to uplift local young artists, to stay out of trouble, do something constructive. And that's what we were doing, you know.
No, it was great. I remember I would go to the shows and I'd always be like, because I'm not a musician, but I would always be like, I want to be friends with these people. And I like when I talk to some of the people that come on the podcast and they're like, yeah, we played there back in the day. And it's like, I can be your friend now.
Yeah, it's so weird. It was such a weird venue in the best way. Like, I remember a couple of times I booked shows there, and one time I booked this band that at the time was pretty small, and it was the first show I ever booked, and all of a sudden like 80 people came out, and it was for this small band, pop punk band from Canada that a couple of months later blew up, and they're a band called Seaway.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and
they
stayed at my parents' house that night because my parents were out of town, and we had like a big party. It was super cool, and it wouldn't have happened if not for the Talent Farm. You know, I just messaged this band who had like maybe 1,000 followers on Facebook, you know, or whatever social media was big at the time.
It was Facebook.
I just messaged them and was like, hey, you guys rule. You guys should come to Florida. And then they were like, yeah, we'll keep you in mind. And a few weeks later, they asked for exactly that. Yo, can you get us a show in South Florida? I was like, I don't know, but let me try. And I did. And again, where else could that possibly happen where some 17-year-old kid books a show at his local venue and makes it work, you know? So that was the kind of spot it was. It was really a magical place.
Yeah, a lot of that I think is just thanks to Kevin and his way of treating the younger crowd like, no, you guys can do stuff. You can do big things, and it's not like, oh, you're just a kid, like, get out of my face.
Yeah. You know? It's empowering, you know?
Yeah, and I think it's super important to have adults like that when you're in those teenage years, and how you say that your parents were like, oh, this isn't actually that bad or whatever. Like, all those things, like, just build you up as a musician and loving the scene, even if you're not a musician.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, Talent Farm.
Yeah, I know. Throwback.
I think the closest thing that I've had in my experience, and it's just not all ages, but it's tough times. Like, I see that kind of support.
True. Yeah.
To the local scene, where, you know, fair enough, like you're doing something good for them.
100%. Yeah, I've been at Tough Times a few times. We played shows there. The guy that owns it, Chalo, is super sick and very, very giving and gracious with his time and his space. So it is definitely a similar vibe for sure.
Yeah. So what's up next for Last Disaster?
Yeah, that's a good question. Right now, I don't have anything super concrete when it comes to like I don't know what my next single is going to be. For example, to put it that way, I have a few different ideas that I'm toying with that I want to flesh out, and I want to put something out before the end of the year. But right now, I'm just trying to play shows. And
wait, you're opening up a tour. I completely forgot.
That's true. Yeah, I was just gonna get to that. Yeah, so just a couple of days ago, this artist who I've become pretty friendly with, I know her through my old roommate in Tampa. Her name is Julia Wolf, and she's like I was gonna say up and coming, but she's a pretty big and established artist from New York. She's kind of like a pop artist, to put it, you know, very generally. She's a very unique sound. I would say that she's like kind of like goth influenced, definitely like rock influenced for sure. But she's this artist from New York, and she was super, super cool with asking, allowing me and inviting Last Disaster to be a part of some of these shows for her upcoming tour. It's called the Sunday Confessions Tour. She actually came out to my show in Staten Island when we went on tour last year, and she bought merch. It was insane. It was kind of like surreal. I was like, what do you want with this t-shirt? Like what could you possibly want with a Last Disaster t-shirt?
Wait, what was the design though?
It was literally just, I'm glad you asked, because that allows me to demonstrate just how awesome she is. It literally is just a white shirt or a black shirt with white letters, Last Disaster. It's not like a cool design. It's not like a cool graphic image. She just liked the music, and she wanted to she was like, no, I want this shirt because I like you. I like this band.
Right.
So that kind of turned into a little bit more of a friendship that developed into her inviting Last Disaster to be a part of these shows. Like I said, I know her through my roommate from college who she's dating, and he's a musician as well. But I'm super grateful to her and her team, and the other artist that she's touring with that's doing the whole tour is this guitarist named Scro, and he's super sick as well. A bunch of the other supporting artists are amazing too, but unfortunately I don't think any of my dates are going to overlap with theirs. I'm going to be playing the April 15th and 16th dates, which are her two Florida shows, her only two Florida shows down here. I'm going to be in Tampa and Orlando. I wish it came down to South Florida, because then I would invite all my South Florida homies.
Yeah, I don't know why artists do that. Like, come on, we exist.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I think I know why they do it. It's a huge commitment of resources and gas. If you squeeze a South Florida show between Tampa and Orlando, you're going 4 hours down from Tampa and 3 hours back up to Orlando. So it's a 7-hour drive just for a South Florida show.
But we matter.
Yeah, we do matter. And all that's to say is that, tours should definitely take a chance on South Florida, because the ones that end up coming down here, I think end up having a great time more often than not.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
It was funny because I just went to see Olivia Rodrigo.
Oh.
And she was like, you guys are the loudest crowd I've had in this whole tour. I mean, it was like a bunch of moms with like their kids.
Yeah.
I single-handedly, my boyfriend and I just brought up the median age there.
Yeah, exactly.
but it was a good show. We turned up in South Florida.
Yeah, I mean, no matter the demographic of the crowd or the ages of the crowd, but if you kind of grow accustomed to tours and artists not bringing their tours down here, you become especially excited for when they do come down here. And I think that crowds want to show their love for artists that take a chance on South Florida, so that all that crowd noise, it translates to, hey, come back. This is a good show for you. It's worth the drive. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of artists, whether they're the size of Olivia Rodrigo or the size of a small DIY band like Last Disaster, if they're able to make the journey down here and take the risk and roll the dice, they always come away feeling like a winner, because of the crowd that wants them to come back and wants to encourage them to make South Florida a regular stop on the next tour, and then one after that, and so on. So.
Yeah. No, and you see that with so many shows. Bands, when they do take the chance to come down here, it does pack out. I've been to so many sold-out shows of Revolution, where it's half of you don't even want to try coming down here and look at the turnout that you get.
Exactly, yeah.
Even though I hate that venue when it's packed.
Yeah, and honestly, when any venue is too packed, it can take away from the fun, for sure.
No, yeah, it's fucking awful. Honestly. Boys Like Girls was a sold-out show at Revolution, and it was insane. But you had angry people, if you push somebody in the crowd, they're upset with you, and it's dude, you're 6 foot, leave me alone.
And there's also no option, there's no clear path. I have to, at least tap you on the shoulder a little bit and give you a little bit of.
No, and I'm not saying excuse me for 10 minutes,
right.
So you can move.
Right.
So we have the tour coming up. Obviously, more music, I'm sure, is on the way.
Yes, definitely. I really just have to figure out which of the handful of ideas I have is going to be next on the chopping block, but. Definitely some new music out, hopefully coming out before the end of the year, yeah.
Is it going to be the makings of an album eventually, or an EP?
Yeah, I love the idea of having a body of work. I think EPs are definitely more practical as far as that goes, especially for independent artists, because studio time is expensive and the resources are not so accessible, especially for myself, who I have to get a drummer and get instruments that I don't play, which is really just the drums. But all that's to say, I think I'm going to focus on singles right now and then maybe compile them into an EP eventually. I think you'll see a lot of artists doing that nowadays because singles are just so easy to pump out, and the consistency is so much more of a critical variable than it was a few years ago because of the social media stuff. Like, you always have to be churning out content. Yeah. That's something that I kind of like gently resist because I don't want that stuff to influence my songwriting or my creative process. I think it's inevitable that it'll influence my creative process a little bit because of those subconscious factors that I kind of spoke about earlier. You know, everything you do every single day influences what you're going to do tomorrow. So I think there is a little bit of inevitable influence from social media and things of that nature, but I try to resist it in a healthy way. You know, try to find like a nice middle ground between you know, making a post on a consistent basis and trying to like put some content out there, but never losing sight of where I get my gratification from, which is making the music and sharing it with the people that are interested in hearing it. Right. So I think with my first EP, I really should have and could have done more in terms of promoting it. I was so disappointed at like how COVID sort of swept us. Yeah, or like, you know, kind of pulled the rug out from under us, so to speak. But I could have done a little bit more when it came to like engaging with like online audiences and just trying to get that outreach. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to do that more now, but I'm really trying to never let that distract me from what's important, which is feeling gratified and feeling accomplished just for making something that matters to me. Right. I see so many artists that really let it get to them that they're not.
And you single every week.
Yeah, and that's totally awesome. But I've had those conversations sort of behind the scenes, if you want to call it that. But I've had those conversations with my buddies that are in bands that are like really constantly stressing about like making content, and not just new songs and not just new merchandise, but just like making silly content for like TikTok and Instagram. And I think that stuff can be so fun to make, mm-hmm. but you have to kind of catch yourself in the moment and say to yourself, oh wow, hold on a second. I'm really letting these little things distract from, you know, feeling accomplished. Right. Because those things will help you get that outreach, but the magic is in the music. The magic is in the product and like the collaborative effort of getting in a room with your friends and making something tangible, or tangible at least in the sense that you can throw it in a CD player or put it on Spotify and share it with other people that are interested in that same type of music. So I'm trying to find that perfect balance, and it's sort of an ongoing process. Right,
and I think a lot of people take out the fun of content creating at the end of the day. Because
exactly, yeah.
There's this one guy, and I think I've mentioned it before, but he does these videos that are super funny, and it's like, why the Red Hot Chili Peppers suck, or why Weezer sucks. Mm-hmm. And he releases one maybe once a year, and they'll get so many views, but they're so well put together.
For sure.
So, and you can tell he's having fun, and it's a different dynamic, and it's not, I owe you guys a video every week.
Yeah. I'll give it to you when I feel like it's something I can be proud of. Even if it is a comedic thing, like, I want it to be a high quality piece of content. For sure. Right.
Yeah. So tour, new music, all very spaced out. We are going at our own pace here. Sounds good. I have a relationship and Reddit post.
With Reddit?
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
You have to give relationship advice.
With Reddit?
Yeah.
Relationship advice with Reddit?
Yeah, there's a relationship advice Reddit where I just grab posts.
Interesting.
We'll have to answer the questions.
Interesting. Okay.
Are you in a relationship?
I'm not.
Good luck.
Yeah, that's all. Where's this going? But yeah, okay. I'm probably not going to do so well considering the fact that I'm not in a relationship, but I'll do my very, very best.
You got this. Bring out the attorney.
Yeah, exactly. I got to give a nice diplomatic attorney-like answer.
Any gentle way to let my boyfriend know I'm leaving him because he lost his job? A little over a year ago, my boyfriend, who's 36, moved in with me, who's 28. In total, we've been together for almost 1.5 years. Things were going well until about 3 months ago when he lost his job due to his place of work experiencing financial difficulties. Consequently, for us, the past 3 months I've been solely supporting us. We live in an expensive city between the rent, food, and other bills. I've barely managed to set aside anything or make any headway with my payments. It's been an incredibly stressful time. Since losing his job, my boyfriend has spiraled into a deep depression. He struggles to find work and spends most days lost in thought. Also, he hasn't made much of an effort to contribute to the household chores because of this entire shitstorm. I've come to the difficult decision that I need to end our relationship. After discussing it with my friends and family, they too believe it's the most sensible choice. Some of my friends tried to remind me of all the good times, but it just wasn't enough anymore. I still love him, but the reality of our financial situation has made it impossible for us to continue together. I'm upset by this outcome, and I believe it's necessary for both of our well-beings. By parting ways, I hope to regain some financial stability, while my boyfriend may find some opportunities by returning to his parents' home. I tried my best to be supportive during this time. I talk to him all the time and give him words of encouragement. I suggested that he speak with a doctor, but he declined that. I offered to go into my savings and pay for a therapist, but he also declined that.
Wow.
Yeah.
So first of all, for what I thought would be when you first said the Reddit, relation, I was like, how?
No, people put their whole lives out here.
But now that I've heard it, I'm so glad for this segment because I feel like I have so much to say after hearing that. I think. Man, that's tough. Okay, so first of all, obviously, props to her for she obviously feels terrible. Like she's being a human about it. She feels terrible for putting her boyfriend,
Boyfriend, yeah.
in this position. But I don't think that she's wrong for breaking things off. I think that that's probably the healthy thing to do and the right thing to do because, she tried a more constructive path. Like she's offered these options that I guess. And before I go any further, the object of this is for me to kind of respond to that, right?
Yeah, to give them their advice.
Perfect. So I'm going in the right direction.
Yeah.
All right, I understand the assignment. I think that if you're in her position, it's got to be pretty frustrating because you're trying to solve the problem that allows you to stay in the relationship. You're trying to find a solution that allows you to stay in the relationship, pardon, is what I meant. And she's done so many things. I think the therapy thing is a huge thing because obviously he's having this terrible time in his life. Getting fired sucks. And trying to find work and being dependent on your partner is not a good feeling. But when you really take all that weight and put it on your shoulders, it stops you from going anywhere. Mm-hmm. It sounds like, she said at one point that that he is lost in thought and not really making any progress with finding a job. And that's probably because, I'm a big hockey fan, and sometimes in sports you'll hear the expression, oh, well, his wheels are spinning, but he's not going anywhere.
Right.
He's trying so hard. It's not because he's not trying, but because of all this pressure and stress that he's putting on himself, it's probably stopping him from, reaching out to those jobs prospects. When you apply to a few jobs and none of them get back to you, it feels terrible.
Shit, yeah.
It feels like you're not going to get a job ever. What's the point in applying to the next one? But at some point or another, he has to be accountable for his role in the breakup. He's got to be accountable for the fact that she's offering to pay for therapy. She's offering to help him work through this in a manner that will allow them to stay together. Mm-hmm. But instead of doing that, he's just kind of shrugging it off and not doing anything constructive about it. Now with that being said, depression is a bitch. That your mental health dynamic, can really stop you from being the person you want to be. But it's her role in fixing that problem can only go so far.
Right.
You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink.
You can't.
And even though I totally empathize with this guy, I'm not saying that he's a bad guy or that he's falling short of some expectation. It sounds like they both need to be on their own because being in a relationship is what we always hear. It's a commitment, and you're committing to somebody else, and that's hard to do. It's hard to commit to someone else when you're not even really committed to yourself. Like you have to find some space to process grief, and that grief can come in the form of being fired. Your ego takes a hit from being fired, but sometimes it takes being on your own and only having to focus on yourself to find the light at the end of the tunnel. Sometimes a relationship can take away from that, and she seems to be recognizing that without saying it.
Yeah.
But it sounds like it's for the best for both of them. He needs to be able to focus on himself, and she at least deserves to be able to
have that financial stability.
To have financial stability, but also to have a partner that is willing to meet them halfway when it comes to solving problems.
Yeah.
So it doesn't sound like he did a whole lot to meet her halfway, and maybe he's not in a position to meet her halfway.
Right.
So that's why I kind of default back to, it's probably the right thing for both of them, even if he doesn't feel like it at the time, and I'm sure he won't feel like it at the time.
Right.
But if she hasn't made that decision yet, go do what you got to do. You know what you have to do. Do the right thing for yourself. Do the right thing for your, partner. And maybe, who knows, you'll circle back. Your paths will cross again in the future. If it works out, if it's meant to be,
it'll happen. That was a very well put together answer. I think if we want to go deeper into it, I think there's some systemic issues also, like the connotation of losing your job and this and that. And basically, they both tried their best, and it's probably best to just leave it in the past and move on for now before anybody hurts anybody, because there isn't a bad guy in this situation.
Right.
This is your moment for your shameless plug. Let anybody know what they need to know about Last Disaster.
Which of these cameras is
that one?
Okay, cool. So first of all, shout out to Vicky. Thank you so much for having me. Shout out to the Senior Citizen Podcast. I think it's awesome that you do this, and I just messaged you, and you were super quick to say, I'm booked right now, but let's make it happen in the future, and we did. So I'm really, really grateful for that. Platforms like this are such a huge part of, furthering the scene and helping artists find a platform. So thank you so much. That's my Senior Citizen Podcast plug. And as far as Last Disaster, check out Last Disaster on all streaming platforms. We have a couple of music videos, one for Rose Gold, one for How to Frame a Murder. Both of those music videos are for songs that are from our debut EP. If you live in the Tampa area or the Orlando area, come through to a Julia Wolf show. We're playing with Julia Wolf on April 15th and 16th in Tampa and Orlando. Or in Orlando and Tampa. Orlando on the 15th and Tampa on the 16th, I think. I could be getting mixed up. But check it out and follow me on social media and stuff like that if you're so inclined to do so. But check out a song. If you get the time to listen to some Last Disaster music, it would mean the world to me. And if it's not your thing, so be it. I appreciate you even just taking a chance on some new music. But that's basically it.
Well, thank you for coming out, Jared. Everybody make sure to follow Last Disaster, follow Jared to stay posted on those tour dates and whatever other shows he might have coming up, especially to stay on track with the new music. And we will see each other on another episode of the Senior Citizen Podcast next week.